up more often. We haven't been in a while.
Okay, good.
My niece is starting.
Capital plan, the last 6-year capital plan ended in 2023. This is projected for the next 6 years. And I'll leave that, I'll turn that over to Doug at this point.
Okay, Catherine, would you like to go first?
Oh, it's fine with me. Yes,
That's
mine
fine.
isn't that. So I'm happy to go first. So I'm proposing that we have, restore and preserve 145 of our books that we still have to, well, hopefully, and if that's our goal, to preserve and restore. Those are all books that have been handwritten. The last couple or so are like a mix of handwritten and typed, so just a couple that are like that. But that's been the goal, since even before I started, was to try to get all of those books restored and preserved. We've had an estimate done from Co-File, and they've come in and they've looked at all those books, 145 of them, and they've given us an estimate of what it would cost. Part of the dilemma that I have right now is that typically every year we put aside about $30,000 to restore books. And when I first started about 10 years ago, we could do about 10 books for that amount, for 30,000. Now, this year, I can only do about 6 books because the price has gone up so much. And sometimes I can do 7. I think last year we were able to do 7. So it's every year it's getting more expensive to have the restoration and preservation of those books done. If we were to continue on this path with about 7 books a year, we're looking at about another 20 years to get all those books done. Co-File they've given us an estimate of $480,289 to do all of those books, with an estimate of 5 to 10% discount if we do them in bulk. But we don't have, that exact number yet, so between 5 to 10%, and there'd be no shipping charges or anything like that, packing charges, which they actually do now. We have a shipping charge if we do it on a yearly basis. On your handout, I believe it says that the project priority is low to desirable. I think that's just a mistake. I had put down medium, because it is required by statute 478(1) that as the Register of Deeds, that I make sure that those books are kept in a safe location, that they are kept in order, that if they're in need of repair, that they shall be repaired at the cost of the county. And that's pursuant to 478:1. And it also allows for those volumes to be taken out for that purpose. All of those volumes, I will say, have been scanned in. So, we do have them preserved once they go out. We have them in the computer because we have a scanning project, and all of those books have been scanned in. Those are really those are our property records. Those are historical records. That's really the blueprint for the county as far as I'm concerned. And I think it's a really worthwhile project to do. I know that many of the counties these past couple of years have spent millions of dollars to get theirs done. I know Hillsborough, Carroll County, for example, Grafton County. They also found that it was very desirable to get them done in bulk. There is a big savings to do that. If we do it in bulk, even at the 480,000 mark, we're looking at a little over $3,000 per book versus right now, which is about, easily about 4,000 or more per book if we do it just incrementally. So I think from a financial standpoint, as well as following the statute and complying with the statute, that is a worthwhile project. I haven't brought those, the books in here, but happy to show you the books. If there's anyone who would like to come in, I'm happy to go through those books with you. There are pictures of the books that I've included, but some of them, are at with the bindings coming off. And as each year goes by, it's as much as we protect them and as much as we can by wrapping them, there's damage to the books and there's tape that are on the books and the ink starts fading. But if you would go through those, you can see where some of the problems are with some of those books. So that's my proposal. I'm happy to answer any questions with regard to that.
Before we do that, Michael, we skipped ahead a little in the agenda, so just,
I am so sorry. I
That's
started
all right.
talking. I apologize. I thought
That's
you'd
all
done that. Sorry.
oh, no, we did, so we're calling the meeting to order at 9 a.m. We're here and, we should, probably call the roll. I know there's, these two of the option members have reached out to me and told me they have work commitments and, I will assume the others have, some similar reason to be there, but let me, if you call the roll, please, anyway, please.
Representative Bixby,
It's not here. I'll say he's excused. They haven't heard from, not heard from. Reverend Conlon, I know he's working today, so. That'd be raging, but anyways,
Sure. Corrigan,
I'm here.
Howard,
Here.
Kaczynski,
Here.
Kenny.
Oh, he's excused.
Yeah. Levesque. Here. Rich.
Here.
Turcott.
Excused, he's got work commitments. So.
Well, I apologize again. I'm sorry about that.
Appears to be a
Sorry
quorum,
about that. Sorry about that.
Yeah. Anyway, now we can go. Continue.
So I'm happy to answer any questions. Those, once we do the 145 books, then we'll have them all done for all the handwritten books that are in the registry of deeds office. We have people coming in all the time doing, not only title work, but also historical, research as well. And, those documents are vital. Those, they give information with regard to property and, land records go back, especially in New England where we have, we have those kind of, that those books are there with all the specifics and they're kind of roaming sometimes the boundaries. It's not like in the Midwest where we have oftentimes the blocks, and it's very straightforward. I mean, so they're very important. And of course, that's you. We can continue going year to year. I think that this, though, with regard to a cost benefit analysis would be very practical. Yes. Representative Kaczynski, yes.
So by law, we have to have them in book form.
By law, we have to have them not necessarily in book form. No, we don't. I don't believe that. It's just that we need to have them in a safe location. But it does talk about all books, records, and files and papers belonging there too. It doesn't speak, I don't believe, specifically to whether or not they need to be in book form, but the fact is they are in book form right now. And it says whenever any of those volumes of records in the office shall be in need of repair, then the register shall seasonably cause them to be suitably repaired at the expense of the county. And if necessary, he may allow such volumes to be taken out of his office for a reasonable amount of time. So I think your question is that I don't think necessarily they need to be in book form, but the fact is they are in book form, those books right now. And we have, that's our record. That's what we have, and they're.
Yeah.
So, I was gonna ask if you had them scanned. So-
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Because we're always told nobody uses books anymore, nobody reads magazines, everything's gonna be electronic. So,
Well, I like the backup of having the books
I
personally.
mean, I like books myself.
I know, so and they are they're historical record. I just, I think there's something to be said for that, to have them in book form minutes.
Just-
I recognize myself, so
I'm sorry.
follow up a little bit out of the scope of the proposal, but like with the more recent records, which are, more in, digital, as they say, over the state archives, we have a program for having the analog form in case for some reason those electronic files are no longer.
Not with the state archives now. I mean, we're not including, we do microfilm
Yeah.
and we also scan our books.
Okay.
And we have them on microfilm as backup as well. I mean, that's really considered in the industry that's
Yeah.
the real form of backup that you should have, the microfilm.
Yeah, but I was also thinking about the, and, or the most recent records kind of for digital, as they say, or?
Yeah, I mean, we have them all on, we have those online. I think we're back to, right now, we're scanned back to book 29. We have 29 books left to do. That's 2 volumes per book, but, and that's going pretty quickly. I mean, we have one person coming in 1 day a week to do those, who's working per diem. So, yes, so the answer to your question is that we do have them all, we have them scanned, and we can. I guess I'm always concerned about that, being able to get on, you know,
Yeah, it's
if there was
gonna
ever an
cheaper
issue,
doing something.
right, if there was ever an issue, I'm always concerned about that. There's something to, since we have them and they're in book form, I think there's a benefit to have them, you know, restored and preserved. Once they're done, then they're done, and, be protected.
Howard has a question.
I mean, it's more just kind of anecdotal to Representative Kuzinski's point. I mean, it's also the fact that if we have something that's not necessarily scanned fully properly, and say the original document's lost, then that scan is also a wash, and we're not going to be able to use that. So, I mean, I've been a history student at UNH. I've had to deal with a number of old documents, and some of them have been scanned and not done in the most careful fashion. So it's very, very difficult to read, and it will make it a lot harder. And I don't necessarily think that it would fully fit the requirements of statute.
Yeah, and I was a history major at UNH too before law school, and so I've done, you know, worked with a lot of historical documents as well in the past. I guess my concern is, you know, if there was ever a disaster, or there's ever anything, and, you know, it's important to have them in written form since we have them that way now. But that's, you know, I know a lot of registrars feel much more strongly about that than maybe even I do, but
I
that's,
got one more question. So
Oh, you recognize your.
what concerns me a little, I've seen other presentations last week, is this 10% contingency.
right.
Well, that's a lot of money. And I know when the state bids out projects, say for instance, the bicycle bridge or walking bridge in Newington, and it comes in above bid, they allow so much money, and that's it. That's on the, I don't know where that is now, it's on the sidelines. Being on a public works committee in Concord, you know, you got these things bid out for a price, and I don't know, you know, I mean, supposedly we're getting a discount on these books by
Yeah.
doing a bulk, and then to throw in almost $50,000 extra, I find that unacceptable myself.
That's yeah, I mean, I think that the 482, based upon my discussions, quite frankly, with co-file, that they've told me that it would be 5 to 10% less than what they've given me for the 480.
Yeah, no, I believe your interpretation there, but the thing is, if we vote 10% contingency
That's
on
up
all
to
the,
you.
on this whole budget,
Yeah,
we're
that's
talking a lot of do-re-mi.
I may have something
That's
to
up
add
to you.
to that quickly.
Well,
Yeah, that's not,
I mean,
I know.
that's something before I recognize Donnie, which is, well, first of all, just like with pedestrian access to the bridge, the registry of deeds is required to preserve these records and make them available. So we're not allowed to just throw them in the dumpster, just as the state isn't allowed to just not make any provision for pedestrian traffic on the Richmond Bridge, I guess I'll call it. Really, Donnie, yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dougie Kane, the maintenance director for Strafford
Okay,
County.
you're going with your thing here.
No worries.
Well, maybe
The,
we should. Voting on that, I guess we'll wait till later to make a recommendation, okay? Okay, go ahead.
speaking to Representative Kaczynski's concern about the 10%
Oh, okay.
contingency, this is a 6-year plan. My goal and my idea on the 6-year plan was to tie it somewhat to the rate of inflation. So we added a 1 to the current inflation rate, which was somewhere between 3 and 4%, depending on where we did the research, and multiply that times the 6-year, and with maybe a 1% buffer in there, we ended up around 10%. We figured that was a state that I've seen increases on some of the stuff that I had bid out 2 or 3 years ago of at least doubling. Some of the window projects have doubled, the glass has doubled, the labor, you know, sometimes the labor is triple on some of the items. Again, all of these items are going out to bid. So we'll get the best price that we can. I think what we're asking is, you know, these are general ideas of how much it's going to cost. And we're looking for approval on being able to spend up to that amount of money, and obviously we're gonna try to do the best we can to keep all these projects as low as
And
possible.
if I may, I'm sorry, if I may, I think you might be in a different position than, you know, with all due respect with that, because
Your
I
mandate,
think
yeah.
once I'm mandated, but also I think once they confirm the number, I don't anticipate it's gonna be more than the 480, and I think it's gonna be less.
Well, I'm looking at yours plus, there's a
Yeah.
lot more. And
Right.
if I might say, apparently the last 6-year plan was approximately $4 million total spending. And, you're talking 4 times that right now, so we're talking, you know, I'm just wondering why it's so much more than that. And I got some other questions on other parts of this process too, but.
Yeah,
Is there anything specific with regard to this project though that I can answer for you that maybe I'm not being clear enough? Yes. Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
I shouldn't be.
well, maybe ask a question. I mean, the registry makes a profit for the county, so if
Yes,
fees that people pay more than pays for the cost of it, is there?
it does,
Is there
but that's
fees
not our goal, you know, year to year, we don't know, you know, I mean, that's always been our, history.
Yeah,
But, you know, there's no guarantee that we're mostly, you know, we're a service, you know, not, that's, yeah,
Maybe
but I understand what you're saying, yes,
maybe fees
exactly.
coming in from some of the people who are examining these records, or is that?
Well, I mean, we have recording fees, there's not gonna be any increase in fees as a result of doing this.
Yes.
Unless we decide to increase, you know, copy charges or something like that, you know, that's a possibility, but that's something we've been.
But the labor cost may be somewhat less to handling these things rather than.
In the future, right, I mean, every year the budget will be less because we won't be putting in that, you know, request for $30,000 to have those books restored. So I mean, once that'll be gone.
Yeah.
You know, so that every year that will be gone. So I mean, this is to anticipate to get these books done. It's a project that we've had in place even before I was here. So, I mean, we have 145 books left to get done. And once those are done, then that does take away from the yearly budget for what we're putting in projections, the 30, so we would be saving on that end, you know.
They're doing great.
And I'm always trying to be very fiscally responsible with regard to our budget to the registry of deeds, so.
Is Co-File unwilling to give us an exact quote?
I
So,
think
because you
they've
say
done-
5 to 10%.
Well, I think it's, to be fair to them, I mean, they have to go through an internal, you know, I mean, I think they've been very fair in saying that that would be the amount, but they would most likely be able to reduce it by 5 to 10% with bulk shipping. You know, I mean, there's a lot of books there that they need to really,
Shouldn't we be
Yeah.
trying to get them
course.
to actually commit to that first and not give 5 to 10%, but give us an actual definitive number first?
yeah, I mean, I'm happy to try to do that. I've asked them for that and I said, do you have an actual, because initially what they told me is they said, we will do a discount for, you know, doing those numbers of books. And I said, well, I would like to at least have a better idea than just saying a discount. And then they came back with 5 to 10%. So I think they need to probably have, you know, more of a maybe commitment from us. with
If we,
regard to
if we
that.
said the funding will not be approved unless you give us an
Sure.
definitive number, then they're probably gonna come back and give us an actual number.
They probably will, right.
And
And
if,
they might say 5%, you know, the lower end of it. So I mean, I'm happy to do that, but yes, I'm sure they might do that. Yeah,
Basically, Resident Howard, right? First, like,
Just one other item, you know what the amount by state law, we have to go out to bid with this.
yes,
Co-File is a company that we went out to bid a few years ago and they gave us the best price. But, by law, they won't be the only vendor.
Right.
We'll have to go out to bid for this. I think a lot of these vendors for these prices, gave us prices, you know, that they believe are the best estimates. But, you know, that once they come in, whoever gets awarded the actual job, companies don't like to send people out if there's no guarantee there, or at least a possibility that they're going to get money. And, you know, because we don't have any money appropriated for any of these things, a lot of companies aren't gonna send, and I'm not specifically talking about this, but I'm talking in general, don't wanna send their engineers out and everything else to give us an exact price if they don't even know that there's a possibility that they could get it.
Exactly.
And that's one of the problems that we run into when we give you estimates, is that companies are hesitant to give us, and they're even more hesitant because they're doing it and know that there's going to be competition. Because we tell everybody that gives us an estimate, this is gonna have to go out to bid, because anything over $10,000 has to go out to bid. So, that's one of the problems we have with getting exact prices
Yeah.
prior to.
There's a problem.
You didn't recognize you, but I have recognized you now.
So if you put out in our minutes saying that we're willing to pay up to this amount, that's the price it's gonna be. Because no matter who wins the bid, they're gonna expand the price until it hits that number.
Which is the other problem.
Yeah.
So don't put out a number until they get a bid down.
Exactly. That's why we we put a number in there, but that's just what's appropriated. It's still gonna be a competitive bid. You will get people that will bid less, is our hope. In some cases, and in other cases, you'll get people that say, I can't do it for that. And ergo the contingency, especially if the item that we're talking about, because it's a 6-year capital plan, might not be done till year 3 or year 4.
Okay, Peter.
So- We've been doing these restorations piecemeal for what, 10 years now?
Oh, more than
More than
that.
that.
1999, I think, or
Okay, so
before.
are we paying the same price for each book now that we were in 1999?
No, as I said, we were getting 10 books for 30 when I started 10 years ago, and now we're maybe getting 6 to 7 books. The prices are going up every year. And, I know, for example, I was just talking to one register, they did one book, and they went out, it was $8,000 for that book. I mean, it's just, the prices are going so high that, I think that Co-File has worked with us over all these years, that they've really tried to come in, at this stage in the process, something that's very, that's very reasonable, and I don't mean to cut you off, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so basically, if we do all the books that are remaining in a shorter amount of time, then we will, over the long run, be saving a fair amount of money, because the books that will cost, whatever, it is per book now, 8,000 per book now, in 10 years will be probably costing 16.
Right, and the books
So-
now for us are by maybe around 4, that's
Yeah,
about what they're
right.
coming out for
Yeah.
us, yeah.
But in any case,
Right,
if we just do this piecemeal the way we have been, in the long run, we're gonna be paying a lot more money,
Right.
so it makes more sense to put this in the capital.
if we're committed to have these books done, I think that's the first question. If we're committed to have these books done and to preserve and restore them, and I believe that is mandated by the statute, then that I think that economically, with regard to that, you're absolutely right, it's the way to do it in bulk.
Reverend Ranger asked a question, follow up on my earlier question, which was, will there also be less labor costs because it's easier for you and your staff to handle these restored books rather than the old crumbling ones when they have to?
Quite honestly, I don't think that's gonna affect it. We do have to take time to take them apart and do them, but I don't think that's gonna really be affected by that.
Very nice, Reverend Ranger again, thank you.
So to your point, it's true that the number itself would probably be lower. But if the value of each of those dollars itself is lower in the future, then you want to spend the money in the future, not now.
So that there is a balance between, it depends on how differential inflation is working. So it depends on the value of that dollar is different depending on what you're spending it on. That's getting into, it's hard enough to predict inflation just as a bulk number, but predicting inflation in terms of the segments, which is what you'd have to do in order to get a perfectly rational argument that way, is, pretty much like using a Ouija board.
Yeah.
So,
Do you think that the inflation rate is gonna go up, or do you think the inflation rate is gonna go down over time?
I think this is gonna fluctuate over time, and what we.
As bad as it is right now, with inflation as it is right now,
Right.
where we
Okay.
have record high inflation, we think that.
We currently have,
We don't, but-
inflation slightly under 3%.
Yeah.
I don't think
That
anyone
was,
believes that.
that was the number that came out of the,
The consumer price index is a garbage index that's explicitly made under state inflation.
Okay, well,
We
that's,
know inflation is
There are-
higher,
there are
nobody
multiple-
buys it.
I think we're getting off to the weeds
Okay,
here.
so-
This isn't the weeds, this is the price of the project. The assumption for paying for it now is that if we pay for it now, we'll save money over time,
Yeah.
right? We're gonna be paying for this either way. So either we pay for it now at highly inflated prices, or we pay for it slowly over time when inflation might go down.
Yeah, I mean,
This isn't the weeds, this is the point.
but also like,
so,
I mean, now I'm going up the weeds
All right.
myself, but inflation goes up, then also like value of properties goes up, so our, our revenues, we can charge higher prices for the deed
Right.
services, but anyway, that's, sort of a macro issue, but, all right, Reverend Howard.
So these books are not getting any younger. And the thing is that when we handle these in the future, years down the road, if we don't handle it sooner rather than later, the thing is that you have to handle these books with more and more care, exponentially more care the years after they started to deteriorate. You're already in a losing battle, and in a lot of ways, it's going to increase the cost because the amount of effort that it's going to take to make sure that you don't destroy these books is going to be a lot more expensive. Is that going to be higher than the rate of inflation per year or lower than the rate of inflation per year? I think that it will be. Or so are they going to burn up in like 2 years if we ignore them? No, but it's the fact that if we don't necessarily take a look at this as a whole and we are just doing it piecemeal, we know that the piecemeal stuff is going to be more expensive. And we know that, yes, we don't. Yes, we do. I don't think you understood the conversation we were. No, I did. And it's something where if we know that if we handle things in bulk, then the price goes down. It's simple economics. The
We don't
more,
have that commitment on that. They said 5 to 10%. They don't have a commitment
yeah,
on
because
exactly
we
how
haven't
much.
committed how much we're doing because we don't know.
If we commit a certain amount, they'll make it the price that amount.
What, in terms of how many books we're looking at, the total size of how many books these companies are going to be actually trying to restore or preserve, we don't necessarily know. And that's the conversation.
We don't know how many books we're preserving?
No, we know how many books, but I'm talking if we're doing it piecemeal versus as a singular order, then that's going to be a larger order if we do it once of more books versus smaller orders of smaller books.
But this goes back to the inflation issue, right? So if
And
the money's
yes.
worth more now than it is in the future,
And
then
we
we're
know
gonna want to
that
spend the
if-
money in the future, not
Yes,
now.
and if we take this as a bundle and we put it together, we know that the rate is going to be less for the total amount that we're going for. If we have a higher initial order, then the total cost is going to be less, because if we spread it out, those individual orders, I mean, you've probably bought signs before. Let's talk about our local elections. So when you look at purchasing yard signs, if you buy 1,000 and you're looking at maybe
Yes,
purchasing
you pay
2,000
less for
yards.
bulk, yes, I get that.
Yes, and
You're
that's
not
the exact,
understanding the actual point.
well,
The point is that the
the
dollars
cost
that
of
we're
labor
spending
is
on that.
going to go up. Because if we don't handle this.
How do you measure the cost of labor?
How do we?
What's the unit
it's-
of measurement for the
it's
cost of labor?
because the books themselves are not getting any younger.
No, you do not measure the cost of labor in books. You measure the cost
No,
of labor in dollars,
not.
and the dollar value itself fluctuates. If you
Well,
don't
you don't
understand that, and you don't factor that in, then you're gonna make bad math.
Let's, I don't think.
Hey, I mean,
Hold on,
this
hold
is
on.
something
We're
where.
here. We're not here to criticize each other's math skills, so like that's,
Well, it's also
yeah. so-
about, the industry and the education that I'm receiving currently in this field of work. I feel like I can kind of talk on this, and as somebody who's, a numbers guy,
Yeah.
you may know the numbers, but you don't know necessarily the nitty gritty.
I know that paper gets old over time and it gets brittle.
Yes,
That, you don't need a history degree to know that.
yes,
Yes.
exactly. Well,
I've been
and
very
if you realize that, then if you have brittle paper and you go to flip a page and that page tears and rips, then guess what? It's gonna cost more because you have to repair that.
Okay.
It's just that.
Reverend Kaczynski.
Just talking about this crisis situation with opening these books up, but I'm a little mixed up. If all these pages are scanned, would you still physically open these old books page by page if you had it electronically and it was accessible?
Well, that's up to the person who's coming in. I mean, you know, that's allowing the consumer, our constituents to decide if it's more convenient for them
Yeah.
to be able to use the computer, to be able to look at some of those books. Some people want to come in and actually look at the books because it's easier for research oftentimes to have the books in front of you, because it is just, at least for me, it is sometimes to have the books there because you go back and forth. All those books would be encapsulated, the pages in Mylar. So you would still be turning the pages, but they're all protected. So once they're preserved, the tape's off, that everything's cleaned up on those pages, they're put in special Mylar, each page in Mylar. And COFA, interestingly enough, even though we would have to go out to bid, obviously, is they have a patent. They're the only ones that have a patent for the certain Mylar that actually preserves those pages more. Now, I remember years ago when we did go out for bid, you know, for this, everyone else who came back was so much more expensive. I mean, it was almost laughable, and CoFile was just so much more reasonable. And so that's, you know, why we have been with them. And I think that they really, you know, based upon what we've had to pay in the past to have these books restored, what they've given us for an estimate, I think, again, you know, seems to be, you know, in line, you know, with what, and with the reduction included in that. And then a further reduction, hopefully, you know, it will be at least a 5% because they've committed to that. So the question, I guess the answer to your question, it really depends on our constituents, whether or not they want to come in and look at those individual books. I know we have high school students coming in and, you know, for tours, and, you know, I show those books, and I've always pushed them to come in to do research and to look at the actual books, because I think there's something to be said to actually be able to see them and to have those preserved. That's our history, you know. We have books from deeds from Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. You know, they're very important, I think, you know, for the history of our county. So I guess it depends on the person if they want to go online. It is a little more difficult with those books. I mean, hopefully that will change in the future. With regard to the indexing, not to get too involved in it, but you can go in and look at it, but you have to do it. It's not, we don't, because it's such a huge project, those older books are not indexed that they are now, the way they have now. So you have to go to something called old indexes, and you actually have to flip through it on the computer as if you were in the Registry of Deeds office, which is great. We have them up, but it's not quite the same, but that's probably more involved than what.
Is this what the finished product looks like with the black page and the white lettering as opposed to the?
It depends on, some books have what they call they have black sheets. There's not too many.
Yeah,
But there's very few, but I think they included that because during a period of time, they were actually putting them on black sheets with white print, you know?
it says photostat, right?
Yeah,
I was
let's
just
see,
kind
right
of
here.
curious.
Yeah, these are different. These are, there's not too many of those really, but those are they actually, for a period of time, not when I was here, but like a long time ago, they would put them on black pages with the white print. And so those would, you know, anything that would be done with their damage with those would be.
That doesn't have a historic look to it, but.
No, I don't know why they even include that, to be quite honest. I think this is more for the records management, to give you a background on how they safeguard history, you know, and this is more like an informational. This isn't with our books. These are not our books that are showing here.
Yeah.
These are just ones of examples that COFA has done. And I'm just responding to you that saying that, yeah, we do have some like that,
Yeah.
but the ones that we're getting done, I don't think any of them have those, because those are more recent books, like in maybe I don't want to give you exact dates, I don't want to be wrong on it, but they were after the books that we're having restored. I don't think there's any that we have that have to be restored like that, actually.
That's the only page I see that
Nope,
shows a
and then,
restored.
I'll show, happy to show you those. I can bring some to you right now, even that are done. I can go grab a couple books that are done. But these are the ones that we have now that are in this bundle, that have to be restored. Like, these are just examples, you know.
I'm saying, will a restored page look like,
Oh,
just like that?
they're beautiful. I'll go grab you a couple now if you want, a couple of binders and bring them over. How they look.
A sample of unrestored and restored.
Yeah, I can do that. I can go grab that now if you want. Be happy to. Go grab it now, or
Sure, yeah.
should I? Okay, all right, go grab those. Okay.
I guess we're in recess until what,
Well, it probably won't be that long.
no. Oh, that'd be it.
It's kind of like a negative or something, you know?
Oh, maybe that's for, yeah, I don't know. It's a photo negative, yeah, or something. I don't think they're stores like that. Is it Strafford?
Oh, she said it wasn't.
Oh.
That's fairly,
Oh, maybe it's Strafford.
it makes sense to you. Would be.
Can we make room on the table for these things?
Oh, yeah.
Want that this one?
they're going down in the archives, which is where we store the books that haven't been done.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd carry these over because they're pretty heavy.
No, yeah.
Around people.
Please,
I mean,
Don't do this.
Yeah.
Some of it's black, white and black.
it's actually a lot. During the sixties, lots of microfilm, we used to, it used to be a reverse image.
Oh, is that what that is? It's microfilm and they just sort of,
I believe so.
oh, okay, that makes sense. That. And find the oldest thing we can. 1912. You get older the way, no, it does not.
Well, this was for the year today,
Yeah, this is all 1912 stuff.
like June.
A little map.
Or even my times. Hey, Peter, maybe you remember 1912.
Is that a dig?
But not that well.
Yeah.
There's also the King's Grant records and deeds too.
Oh, cool.
Very important.
If they're not teaching cursive writing in the schools, there's
How
gonna
they
be,
gonna read
there's gonna be a point where nobody, you're gonna need an interpreter.
Well, that's just for any alien either.
I learned cursive
Yeah, that's perennial bill, which,
and there's no question about it. Script and handwriting has changed dramatically.
Yeah,
Like,
and plus like with a lot of the technology, when they scan it online, they can probably like scan it so that way you can use like an app or something.
Yeah.
OCR doesn't work very well on cursive, no, so someone has to, would have to manually type it in, and that means they have to manually. And sometimes it's difficult.
Representative Smith, did you learn, cursive Frakturschrift?
I actually, I did acquire it myself, and I haven't done it recently, but for a while I was transcribing and translating old German documents. And of course, then they actually went to a different script. So
I know.
the number of the letters are dramatically different from what they used to be.
When I was
And then
in grade school, I had a mate who's Germany, and she used to correspond with her grandmother, who wrote in
The old-fashioned.
cursive Fraktur, and she was in high demand at the Lilly Library of old books, because there were very few people who knew how to read.
Oh, yeah.
Fraktur.
The kids in Germany now, they're not learning that at all.
Yeah.
I mean, they just don't write that way anymore. And some spellings have changed and so forth.
well, they even,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
so yes, right, but it's,
Well, there's a, I can hang your record too.
they used to, print newspapers in black letters of the 20th century.
Oh, yeah.
But
Go back and read the
Yeah.
Declaration of Independence and so forth.
Yeah, but printed Frakturschrift is, you can pretty much manage with a little bit of patience if you know Roman lettering, but the
Handwriting.
cursive
Oh, must be.
is
Handwritten
completely different.
Got stuff on the back, so. I don't know if that's.
I had a situation where the document had been stored in a chest underneath the house.
Sorry.
Buried underneath. the
Oh,
house.
that's,
It's from the basement.
Hey.
thank you very much.
And the middle of the page.
Thank you. All
Give
right.
us some tips on handling these safely before we open them.
Yes.
We've been just being very careful. They told me that it was okay. So far, when I talked to them, they said, well, just be careful. Because I did ask them, should I have gloves? Should I have no? Just be careful, they said, this other way.
Thank goodness.
So you can see how This one isn't as quite as, maybe. This one actually isn't quite as bad. Do you have a napkin?
1891. So is there any specific year order that you're using to determine what gets,
The way we've been
Taken care of
doing
first?
it is that in the past, what we've been doing, honestly, when I first started, we were doing the worst books first.
oh, okay.
Okay, but then as the prices started getting higher, then I had to try to do the worst books combined with maybe some that weren't so bad, but were older.
Mhm.
Just to try to keep it within the budget,
Oh, okay.
you know, so, yeah, so the ones that were really, yeah, so these are. This is an example of when I think it's actually not so bad. This book is not actually so bad.
Every sense,
Yeah, I mean, they're all,
Fine, the
yeah.
pages look
Oh,
pretty good.
yeah, and then they have like, some of them have tape on it. This one actually doesn't have that though. So I took one that really wasn't so bad, but then we have others. I mean, there's so many, there's out of the 145, I have the ones like just were there. This one, careful of this. And everyone's, can you see it okay? All right, can you
Yeah,
see it? All right.
Sometimes the older documents are better shape because of the paper they use, is better than 19th century.
Well, I have to say the problem we have with it though, and I've been told this as well, is that, I think it's until, you know, I might be misspeaking. I think it's 1980 or 1990. Then they started using non-acidic paper.
Okay.
So that is also an issue. But my feeling is kind of what you think, if it's typed, it's easier to see it with it scanned. So I'm not even, you know, proposing that, you know, at least at this stage, that would be something that would, but the ones that are handwritten, you know, to me, they are, so you can see like some of the pages are starting to get, you know, ripped a little bit, and we're trying to keep them as well as we can preserved. We wrap them in brown paper and try to keep them as, see, now there's a lot of tape on this one. They pull the tape off with the process and then they are able to cover it with, I think if this shows, this might show some that had tape that were, I just grabbed this one, I'm not sure if it had tape on it as much, but they do such a good job that sometimes you can't even see the tape. And what they do, that's like, for example, this maybe, their process is that sometimes the tape will cover the words, so you can't, even if we just tried to scan it like this, and we don't, is that you wouldn't be able to read it because it would cover the word, but the way that their process is, it pulls it up and you can actually see the words under it. Well, that one's fine, that one's okay, but.
No, I'm moving one of the year.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So that's not, but see, some of this is all, and this all starts deteriorating over time, obviously.
The script is a lot more
Oh, some of
simple
the,
than the ones in the 1912 book.
some of the, you know, it's really interesting.
It depends
Some
on
of
who's
this,
the-
yes, the register. And I have to say, some of it is fantastic. You can read it so easily. Others were there with a magnifying glass trying to read the word, you know, because the way it's so,
This guy was a much better writer. than
yes,
this guy.
exactly,
This is
yeah,
This guy was too fancy.
Yeah.
He was throwing on.
Exactly.
1834.
Yeah.
yeah. But I always show the ones too from Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, Secretary of State at the time. And what's so interesting is
That was
that,
preserved, right?
oh yeah, we have all those, but what's so interesting is that this, they don't, you know, they obviously didn't have like they didn't have a mechanical skill. They just drew out their little seal, you know, and made it, was just, it's kind of funny. It's fun to show the high school students, you know, and a lot of them, you know, I always give them copies of that so that they can see it. And for some of them, they're just amazed even with cursive writing, because a lot of them aren't learning cursive, you know, it's like, yeah, me too. My kids learned it, but see, so now this, for example, like that.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so we're getting into, see, that's an issue there a little bit, but, so that's another example, and then we have this one that's really, I just happened to grab these, I didn't really look at what they were, just as the ones that, so there might be some that are even worse than this, but you can see how the pages are starting to.
What is that? Wait, go back on?
Wiggles.
Yeah.
I saw that on.
Yeah, the red
What
one.
is there another, is there red on there?
There was red on
No,
one of them, but
it
it
was
looks
like-
like it was official.
It was like these squiggly lines as if you were deleting.
Well, they're gone.
That's weird.
We'll never know.
That's weird. I'm kind of curious now to
I
see.
think
what
it's
that is.
vetoed or voted, or it was like.
Well, sometimes they refer to the discharge of mortgages. That's how they used to do it. Is that they would do it on the, instead of filing a separate document, they'd go back to the original document and sign it in the margin. You know, they'd say it's discharged and give the date, but see this one, look at that.
So here's a section that's perpendicular, written perpendicular to the other.
Yeah, but they're all getting, like, this is getting, that's not good. That worries me. Yeah, so that's just an example, but I have so like happy to go through, so many of them, they're just, but it's just, I think, a good example. And I just took these, off the shelves that were.
These are things that have not yet been,
Oh, no, these aren't restored. So this is an example of.
well, no, I'm saying, but this is something that has not yet been
Scanned.
put into go through the process. I can see that the volume that you brought in first has been, preserved.
Yeah, exactly. Those have not been preserved, right?
Yeah, these are
Yeah,
some stuff waiting still.
right. So that's on our list of the 145 to get done, to be preserved and restored. And what happens is that they are very meticulous, usually one binder usually of this, let's say, will become two of these.
Yeah.
And so when they do it, because of the Mylar, and it'll turn into, like, for example, what's this one? This might be volume,
365.
yeah, so it's pages 1 to 3, but we have a volume 2 of page, it,
301,
right,
whatever.
exactly, of 395. So it breaks it up. So this came in as one book, but we actually have 2 books because the way that they do it, and they have the Mylar, that's, yeah, so it's, you can see they do a very good job.
On this one with marker.
Yeah, but that was probably when that was sent in, that was probably really dark. And it was probably covering the words.
Yeah,
And so
someone rubbed the ink.
Yeah, and there was probably like an ink blot, but they were able to pull it up so you can read it. So, that is actually a good example. Just open it up to that page. Yeah, so that's the.
Those do end up looking like the original documents.
They're really good. They do a great job with it, I think, whoever does it, they're in that business, so. And they do a good job. So hopefully that is helpful to actually sometimes being able to to actually see it in person. I apologize because I should have brought them
Are
in.
these scanned?
These are scanned.
Okay, so we have digital backups.
Yes, they are scanned. Let me make sure this volume, I know this one is. Oh, yeah, that's all scanned.
But there are, as you pointed out, there are places where tape might be covering
Oh, yes.
some of the text, so that the restoration process actually provides
It restores it, so you can see.
it gets us more information than we would have otherwise.
Absolutely, because they could be covering a name, it could be covering, the measurements, that line, you never know, or maybe not, maybe it's just off to the side, who knows, it's just, but, yeah, that's.
When you restore them, what do you do with these?
We keep those, these are all restored, so these are the ones that, we're gonna put these in the, we call it the vault in our office on the first floor.
The
So,
actual covers?
no, so they will
So they
take
keep
all
them.
these out. No, so what they do is they take all these out, these pages, they restore each page and preserve each
Yeah,
page, put them out, and
I
they put it in one of
understand
these.
I understand
And
that.
then we put these right in our office, so anyone who comes in can look at them. And we don't have to worry about them touching it, because
I'm saying these are all retained then, the originals.
these are the originals. What they do is they take each page.
Yeah.
The original page, and they
Okay, I
restore
thought
and
that-
preserve it, and then they
I
put
think
it
those are
in.
cop-
So
cop-
these are all originals.
Oh,
That's
okay,
why it's so
gotcha.
important.
Alright.
And that's a really good question. Thank you. Because because these are the originals. It's so, and that's like the one that we have, like from Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, all that. They're originals and they're in here, just like, I go to Library of Congress, I go to this, and I've done research in there. It's amazing to see it. You see the US Constitution all done out, right? That's so I mean, I get kind of excited about these books, so I know I get a little carried away. I laugh when I talk to but no, these are the originals, and, another point is that, I've saved enough of the, I've saved enough of the shelving that I've counted, that even if we do 2 volumes for each one, it's roughly about 321 spaces we need. I've counted them all up. I think we're fine. I may need like just one small little shelf for the rest of them, but if we had them all done, we could put them all in our office where they are now. If you come into our office, you'll see that all the ones that have been done, and they're all on display, and they can all be used. And we have people, we've had some gentleman come in for a title that he's been working on. And he's going back to the 1800s. This past week, he's been in every day, and he's been using these books, the ones that we have out on the shelves. So, and because the older the books, personally, when I've done historical research, it's easier to have the books in front of you because you can go back and forth. And for me, maybe I'm just not as good with a computer, but I like to have them. So but again, it's a decision that you all have to make, whether or not you want to do them all now and have that done as part of the project, or if it's something you just want to do piecemeal every year. That's the question. But I don't know this gentleman's name, but he did make a good point that, the longer you wait, those books are just going to keep getting older and they actually might cost more to fit, but I don't want to get into the, that's up to you guys to decide that. So I want to give you my presentation with regard to that. I think it's important to have done, and we're mandated by statute to do it. So it's not something that, is just,
Are you gentlemen done with these? I'll just move them.
Yeah, thank you
Are
very,
you
very much
okay
for
with
grabbing
these?
those. That
Oh,
was,
yes,
nice. It was good to
absolutely.
see.
Oh, well, thank you for asking. I appreciate
I'd like to
it.
take
And we
one
can-
home to look at.
Well,
Borrow one?
Well, you can come and visit us. You can stay in the office.
Well, it's a good visual here anyway. So.
It's good to have the visual, and I apologize because I should have brought them in.
Apologize.
I've done it before. I did it before, but I didn't think, I wasn't thinking about that. I should have. Do you have any other questions that I can answer with that? Okay.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your consideration. I appreciate it. I'm gonna put those back and forth and just, thank you.
For the history here.
No, we're good without, no. I will go bind them up.
Presentation, registry of deeds, that was like even more interesting. Well, it was gonna be interesting, but even more interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Justice Administration.
Okay, yes, the second segment will be justice and administration items.
You're up, Dougie.
J&A maintenance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, delegates. Good morning, everybody attending. I'm Dougie Kane. I'm the maintenance director for Strafford County, and I'm presenting, first I'd like to say thank you for attending this morning and helping us address this not insignificant portion of our budget and of my job in keeping this building safe and dry for the tenants. We have several issues here. I'll go over them one at a time, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has regarding these items. First, I'd like to start with the sewer pump replacement downstairs. We have 2 sewage pumps right now, which are basically meant to move solids. That's all they're meant to do. Recent years, we've seen the introduction of a lot of foreign material. The way that sanitary napkins are constructed now, the materials now are more abrasive, and we're seeing advanced wear in these pumps. We're having to call AAA and other vendors more often to come clear these pumps. It's a hassle, and it can be a disaster if we have jury selection or a very busy trial and all of a sudden we have no flushing toilets. What I'd like to do, I spoke briefly with an engineer at AAA Pump in Manchester, and he came over and took a look at the pumps that we have, gave me a recommendation on what pumps to buy. I asked for an engineered solution. He told me it's not necessary to have an engineered solution. We can take the pumps out that we have right now, which our crew is perfectly capable of doing. The maintenance crew at Riverside and the rest of the county. we can swap these out ourselves. So we're looking at an outright purchase of these two pumps. These new pumps that I have spec'd on the request form are a cutter style. So basically they cut all of the solids before they are able to be pushed. The wear that we have experienced in these pumps has created a massive tolerance. So basically nothing moves. The pump just turns and turns and turns, and then becomes plugged with foreign material like needles, brown paper towels, clothing. People flush anything down the toilets. It's a public building, so we're people are just going to do whatever they need to do to get rid of stuff that they don't want to throw in the trash can. The best estimate I'm coming up with is about 35 each for these. I've included the cost for a rigging crew, but I don't think the rigging crew is necessary. We don't need to call in somebody else. We can handle this ourselves with a tripod and a chain fall. It's not really a technical operation. Again, all of these jobs will go out to bid. We will put out a bid for the pumps themselves, and low bidder, as long as they meet our specs for those pumps, will be receiving the work. I'm putting in replacement of the cast iron elbows as well. The cast iron elbows were left in place last time, and they have about a 20-year lifespan. I think the corrosion, our low alkalinity in our wastewater and our high dissolved solids make the corrosion advanced in here. It's kind of a common theme we see with any wastewater products around here or any of the water supply infrastructure that we have in the buildings. Is there any questions on these items?
All those here.
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so, the water that we're using is obviously Dover water coming right out of, the processing plant. This attached to basically each well, right? Each well has, well, how much uniformity is there in the water?
From the way it was explained to me from the wastewater division, the water could leave the water treatment plant perfect, and it picks up and deposits whatever it needs on its way. Water is always looking to absorb whatever minerals it comes in contact with. So once we get water out here, after it leaves the plant, we have low alkalinity because of some of the chemicals in the pipes. Leaching is very common, thousandths of an inch they can measure per year in the deterioration of these things. But the type of water that we have obviously becomes more corrosive, I think, once we get some of the other acids in there from the wastewater. And that's where we're seeing accelerated wear in these pumps.
Are you dosing the water at all as it comes out of the line, the feed line, before it goes into our system?
We have several miles between the source water plant and our location here, so who knows what's in those pipes? Those pipes have probably been there for 100 years in some sections.
Right. But the water that comes off the feed line onto county property, are you dosing that water? Are you examining it in any way so that you know that this is a batch that's especially alkaline or especially acid or whatever? And so you're putting something in to counteract that, or is that?
Yes, we have that in several locations. We have that in 2 of the buildings at Riverside, and we have that at the new jail at the HOC. We're experiencing rapid deterioration there of tempering valves. We were having boiler failures through corrosion and rot. We had a chemical system installed about 2 years ago, and we're in the phase right now where the alkalinity and the dissolved solids are starting to even out. So we're seeing less and less wear. We're having less issues with tempering valves and any brass things that are in the feed system. I have a request actually in the Riverside 6-year capital plan for adding that to the Alms House along with our boiler replacement that we have there, because we have 2 leaking boilers there right now that were installed 14 and 16 years ago, I believe, respectively. So yeah, it's something that we're mediating as we can, as time and technology allows, and as items fail, we can introduce this tech to keep the corrosion down.
For example, when you're driving along, you have to put on the accelerator if it's not in cruise control, and you're adjusting on a constant basis, whether you're slowing down and you want to.
Yes, yeah.
So the water is not a steady state. It's not
No,
like
sir.
Coca-Cola, hypothetically.
No, sir.
Which is always exactly the same.
Sure.
Right?
It's basically a moving target. They introduce a basic set of chemicals based on their initial tests, and those chemicals go to work. Now, this is on a closed hydronic heating system, but baseboard, heat and water fed boilers. And so what happens is they introduce the chemicals, we go through a process of leaching is what it was described to me. Some things that were embedded in the pipes and in the material start coming out and getting distributed into the system. We start seeing things come, seizing and leaking and basically trying to get back to normal. We can address those items as they come up. This is a bit different in the water that we have that comes into the sink. There's no way for us to treat it. I mean, we're talking millions of dollars to treat the actual water that comes out here to try to make it perfect, to prevent corrosion of 2 pumps that cost $70,000 every 15 to 20 years. Okay. If it was cheaper and if it was easy and if it was available, I would love to treat the water coming into this facility because we have major problems with the water. It's not the city's fault. It's just the way that the infrastructure is that we have, the stuff that was laid down and before anybody here was alive. And that's what we're dealing with right now.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions about the pumps? I guess, where does the Dover water supply come from? I should know that.
We are off of the well on Mass Road, I believe, down by Schnitzer. I believe that's what feeds us. Pretty sure that's the closest one.
Reverend Gazinski has.
How often are these pumps getting plugged?
We've seen,
Daily?
no. We had 6 service calls last year, I believe,
Yeah.
and they were during high usage times. We had a double murder trial here and there was a lot of foot traffic in and out. Jury selection always makes me a little bit nervous because we have a couple hundred people come into the building. If there's really no way for it to warn us, just all of a sudden we're not moving solids and toilets aren't flushing. And if it was something that I could predict, I would love to put in a preventative maintenance plan and say, okay, we're gonna call AAA 6 times a year or whatever, but we're talking $2,000. It's 2 men and OSHA requires 2 men in a confined space like that, so they charge accordingly. Whenever we get a
So
service
your
call.
people don't do it, you have to bring somebody in?
Correct.
Do OSHA requirements apply to them if they're working on a public building? I guess because it's a private company.
Yeah, what I was told when I questioned the price of the bill, the first time when I became director was that that's what's required. I said, okay, that's what's required, that's what's required. I really don't have, honestly, I don't have much time. If I get a call at 11:30 and there's a lot of people in the building, I have to move now. I have to call somebody who's gonna come right now.
Right.
And that's how we.
You can get somebody that fast.
AAA's been very good to us. Yeah, Paul, the owner's a great guy. He's been responsive. I found out, I learned the hard way that just because a company says septic service doesn't mean that they do commercial pumps and tanks and the type of system that we have. We have submerged pumps and they basically a holding tank for the sewage in the building.
So when one goes out, is that second one the backup or something? I mean, it's not like
Yes.
sewage is not gonna stop flowing.
Yes, but we don't have any indication that the first one is plugged until the second one starts plugging.
Oh.
Yeah, they don't run in tandem. They run according to demand in the tank. That if the tank height comes up to half height because of usage, one pump will operate. If that pump can't reduce the volume of the tank because more is coming in, the second pump kicks in.
So how are you guys alerted by there's some kind of gauge on the pump? Like
Yes, there's a
alarm or something?
Yep, there's a red light on the box and there's a alarm in the maintenance department downstairs. It lets us know that that's not moving.
So if one of the tanks fills all the way, then the second pump kicks on.
Single tank, 2 pumps in a single tank. One handles when I get up to the first half, and then once you get past that, somewhere around 70%, that's when the second pump kicks in.
All right,
The first,
is there any alarm tied to it so that we know that the second one is kicked off or anything, or?
we have a high limit switch. It's basically a red box on the wall with a light, and that tells you what the limit is. So if we see that limit's coming on and it's staying on, I mean, that second pump should be able to take that tank down pretty quickly. They're large pumps. They move quite a bit of volume. So if we see that that's on and it stays on for 10, 15 minutes, we know we're in trouble. And it's usually during high usage times in the building. We could have a couple hundred people come here for jury trials. So that's a lot of.
Those controls under constant observation. We're sitting here, if the light goes out, we all recognize it immediately, the light is went out.
Yes, it's in
We're all out in the next room, they don't know what's happening in this room.
It's in the sheriff's dispatch area as well, which is manned 24 hours. Or
Okay.
staff 24 hours.
Is that the purpose of the control panel, which is or that section of your.
Correct, yeah, the control panels need to be replaced because these are, how do I put this? The pumps that we have right now are instant on, you basically flip a switch, and you have all of the rotational torque of a 20 horsepower motor trying to rip that pump out of its stand. I mean, it comes on like that. If there's a solid or something binding it, say a fork or something solid in there, it can do some real damage. What these new control boxes do is give us a soft start. They're called VFDs, variable frequency drives, and they bring the motor up very slowly. If there's any issue with that motor rotating, it shuts it off immediately. It's the way that these pumps are put in nowadays, not just a simple on-off.
So going back to, so is there a wire connected to the pump that tells someone in some building somewhere that the second pump is kicked on?
Yes, sir. That's in the maintenance department downstairs and it's in
Okay,
the
so,
sheriff's.
so people notice it.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I was trying.
Yeah. I would like to get something automated, but we've got coverage for that. It's, again,
Okay.
that's another additional cost, I don't know how many $1,000s, but the system we have right now works pretty well. It hasn't been over yet.
Okay.
Well, because
Is this a common occurrence in public buildings? I mean, when you tell me, it's a little shocking in a way that,
Sure. I encourage-
doing it, throwing all this stuff.
Sure. I encourage you, after this meeting, to do some research online. It's not gender specific, but female sanitary napkins are becoming a big problem because of the materials that are being used right now. They're highly abrasive. So when those get jammed between two pieces of metal, it's like a sandpaper, and it just starts to wear and it starts to wear. And then we snag another sanitary napkin, and that's in there and wearing and wearing and wearing. Paul from AAA told me that they're seeing pumps that they put in 10 years ago that should last 30 years, not lasting 30 years.
So you have signage in the bathrooms and stuff.
Correct. Yes.
That's not the boss.
It's been my experience, Representative, we could pave the place with signs. Human behavior is human behavior.
Yeah.
This is what I'm hoping to install to mitigate that, so it's not a problem anymore. So we don't have to worry about solids, we don't have to spend money on service calls. And we have a good solid system for at least 20 years to handle the solutions in the courthouse. I asked if there was a different system available. That got into many thousands of dollars of re-engineering the holding tank. I asked about removing the holding tank because we are obviously above grade for the rest of the sewage system in Dover, being up here on the hill. They said that's also not a good idea. You want something that's going to work all the time, and gravity feed is a problem if it becomes clogged.
And this just make sure that the pump doesn't like kick on immediately.
Correct. The control boxes give us that variable frequency drive for a soft start.
Does that soft start, does the soft start also reduce demand charges?
I'm sorry, sir?
Does the soft start also reduce electric demand charges? All right,
Briefly, you have an inrush, you have a inrush of amperage when you start an electric motor many more times than what the motor is rated for, sometimes more than what the breakers can handle. And if something is jammed in there, that's another problem, because sometimes it can trip the breaker, and then we immediately go into alarm. So if this happens, 7 o'clock in the morning on a busy day, when all of a sudden I'm gonna need every bathroom in here to work, it's pretty hairy sometimes. As far as electrical savings and costs, I don't believe so. I don't think they use any less electricity than they do before. The motor is still rated. We're using the higher voltage. We have the option of using 277 or using 460. The higher voltage is more efficient, so we're going to go with the 460. It's available in the building. We need to use that. This building was originally wired with 277, and 277 has become a little bit bizarre, really, now. Just even finding the PTAC heating units in our entryways when you come into the building. Those fan motors are 277 volts because that's the supply that's available. So now when we look for PTAC units, we find less and less units in that size available in the 277 voltage. Things should be 208 or 460, and the rest of the complex is either 208 or 460.
Building's 3-phase?
Yes. Yeah, all the buildings here are 3-phase or have 3-phase available. All of your mechanical and all of your infrastructure, you're gonna find 3-phase on those because of efficiency. I mean, we have some smaller circulator pumps that are 1-phase just for heating. A lot of circulator pumps and hyder for the hydraulic heating on the floor and your radiant heat, those are all single phase. But a three-phase motor is gonna be much more efficient electrically than a single phase motor.
Right? I guess is the next thing generator or what base?
Sure. Any other questions on the sewage pump?
Yeah.
And if there's any questions after the meeting, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm available all the time. Okay, so moving on to generators. This is the third phase of a project that we had Dubois and King, an electrical engineering firm out of Vermont, come down, and they were gracious enough to give us a courtesy assessment on this complex to give us an idea of what we can do. There are several areas that are not compliant with life safety code and with fire department code and with TMS requirements on this complex. The plan that they came up with involves moving a generator from the jail, which is a life safety concern because we have people sleeping there 24/7. That's really the threshold for life safety requirements when we determine what we're going to put in for equipment and how it needs to be serviced and how it needs to work. This building doesn't need the latest and greatest generator. We just need something to keep the lights on so folks can get out. Really, that's it. The sheriff's department has their own natural gas generator, so they're okay. The rest of the building has very, very limited backup generator power right at this time. We have possibly a 30-year-old generator that used to power one of the buildings at Riverside as a generator here. The wiring that was done in this building was not done to life safety code. There are items in here that have to run according to the law that we don't have supply for right now. We have a main panel downstairs as well that we do not have replacement breakers available for. They're just not manufactured anymore because apparently the design is not safe. So we're looking at replacing that main panel downstairs and doing some rewiring on our transfer switches.
Everything Kaczynski.
Yes, sir.
So, life safety code.
Mhm.
These buildings were built according to code at the time they were built. Well, I would assume if they got approval to operate, it would have been.
You know, sir, as a representative and familiar with budgets, the budgets run out. A perfect example is Hyder House. When Hyder House was built, I'm not sure what happened. I'm not sure if they ran out of money or if the vendors just kind of gave up. We had to complete a lot of projects over there. They kind of just got capped. The life safety codes right now, I believe, are running off a 2018 code, I think is the latest that the state of New Hampshire has adopted. We also have CMS requirements.
So, again, though, when I dealt with the codes when I was on EDNA in 2017, we defeated the building codes and the life safety codes, which in my opinion, many were unnecessary. But what did happen, I think people aren't aware that there's not grandfather. Is that because what you're saying is if that building was built to code, so you're saying now in the future, we're gonna always have to be up to the present code. And that's a little alarming. I know it's affected a lot of gathering buildings in the state of New Hampshire. And that's why I'm trying to get clear on this, because if we're moving target and whenever the codes change, we're gonna have to upgrade to whatever those aren't the American codes, they're the international codes.
Sure, yeah, the IBC and the IMC.
So in other words, I mean, when these codes change, we're gonna have to be changed, maybe upgrade to another generator.
When we disturb something, we don't have CMS requirements in this building. There's no Medicaid money coming into here. If it was Riverside or if it was the Bureau of Prisons, it would be a different story. Here, we're a tenant for the state port system. So the state has requirements that the building exchanges the amount of air a certain amount of time and that we have backup for it. We have backup electronics, we have backup electricity, and really just for evacuation. We need to have lights on in here so folks can get out, and that's according to Dover Fire. And right now, the items that we have, that main panel concerns me. We have a large electrical job going up there for air handling. And we have a main panel that we have breakers that we can't find replacements for. So if we can't find replacements for these breakers and one of them fails, we don't have electricity for the entire building. This is the situation that we're in.
So in a 6-year plan, what is this, year one?
That's phase 3. Phase 1, you see here, phase 1, replacing the 750 that's at the jail with, and replacing, there's a 230 kilowatt also in there. Replacing those two generators with two natural gas generators. We're also gonna be eliminating, some transformers, and we're gonna be replacing a troublesome transfer switch over there. So that's phase one. Phase two is replacing a 20-year-old diesel generator at Riverside and doing some rewiring over there and doing life safety programming, which is requirements from CMS. The difference between backup and life safety is life safety has to start within 9 seconds. We have to have generator power come on within 9 seconds because we have 160 people sleeping in here every night. The third,
How long does it take right now?
we're below that. We're at 4 seconds right now on our generators. They're programmed for life safety right now, but they're also powered by diesel. The issue that got uncovered with feeding these generators with diesel. Twice this has happened now. We have storms in January and February that come in with a lot of rain, and then it immediately freezes. We have broken trees, so we lose power here. These generators start running, that 750 consumes 80 gallons an hour and has a 500-gallon belly tank. So we've basically got 6 hours and we have to be pumping 80 gallons an hour into that. When we called to have Hafner's deliver us diesel, they said that they didn't have any electricity at their depot and they couldn't fill their trucks. So we were really in a tough spot. So we're taking our county trucks, taking storage fuel out of some of the storage tanks, bringing it to the generators. We looked into adding tanks to that generator out there, and it's cost prohibitive. We're talking involving the EPA because of the proximity to the river, and there's a lot of regulations that just make it. And again, it's
If they're in concrete casings, that I imagine we could do that. I heard that presentation last week, and I'm involved with trucking. I know a diesel truck that we have, 80,000 pounds, consumes about 10 to 12 gallons an hour. So the 80 gallons, I mean, I know you're saying about putting it in my hand.
It's a 16-cylinder Detroit diesel in that 750 kilowatt generator.
So, I mean, I guess my thoughts would have said there should be 1,000-gallon tank. Or the other question is, how long of a period do we, on average, lose power in this area? Because I know
Several days. The last storm in February at this facility, we lost a fuse. I'm not sure what they call it. I call them snap fuses. They're on the power lines. You know, they take the fiberglass pole and replace the snap fuse. We lost one leg, which took the laundry, and Superintendent Brackett can speak more on this. We lost laundry, and we lost how many other areas at the jail?
We lost part of housing part one. We lost the supervisor's office.
Kitchen, I think there's some kitchen appliances.
Yep.
Sure.
Some kitchen appliances as well.
And what happens is he has to put the facility in lockdown, and inmates in lockdown for day after day after day get really cranky. I mean, there's riot potential going on there when we don't have electricity. I personally, I call Eversource once an hour on the hour. Hey, we're still here. We're still priority. We still need electricity. I understand that their response is they want to respond to things that do the most good. You know, they want to fix that one tree that's going to get 10,000 people their power back before they come out here. We've pulled strings. We've called people that know people. We need to be self-sufficient in this, and natural gas is the way to go, I think, on that, because diesel is finite. You know, diesel is good for a backup, but in our area, we need that to run because our department is usually running around fixing other things like water intrusion, cold, broken windows, that sort of thing, keeping the roads clear. It's usually
so how long of a time period could you have natural gas for without having to resupply?
That would be piped out here. They haven't shut it off yet. I imagine if they shut the natural gas off, we're all in deep trouble. You know, there's probably more pressing concerns at that time.
That was my concern as well. So how do we know how reliable the natural gas is?
There's reports on I believe, did I include it? I believe I included, a report, and I apologize if I didn't. I can certainly send it out, to the whole delegation. And it's basically a report on the reliability of, I didn't include that, I apologize, of natural gas versus diesel. And the benefits of it, the cost analysis, and the availability, all points to the natural gas options being the way to go.
So, to clarify, so you get the natural gas through a pipe.
Correct.
At the other end, there needs to be something that's actually feeding that pipe.
Sure.
So.
That would be maybe the landfill up the street. I'm not sure where the natural gas comes from. We have two companies. We have a delivery company and a service company, just like everyone else. So we have spraying and we have units that doing that give us our bills.
Yes, so,
Yes.
by law, the, gas utilities, so the natural gas goes to, customers who are on the pipelines, for heating, et cetera. It goes to, electric generators. By law, the people who are on the pipeline have priority over the electric generators, which means that, it's more likely that the electricity is gonna, if there's a shortage of natural gas, what's gonna go first is the electricity and then the people who are on the pipeline. So people on the pipeline have the priority, for whatever natural gas is out there. So it's gonna take an incredible disaster to cut off the natural gas. Unless, you know, if something like, if a meteor falls through the, and you know, if the meteor hits the ground and makes a crater where there's a natural gas pipeline and it breaks. Yeah, okay, so we lose it. What are the odds of that? But natural gas is even more reliable than it's substantially more reliable than electricity. And certainly more reliable than a tank of, you know, however big you build your tank for diesel, you're still gonna have, it's still gonna run down. The gas is just gonna keep flowing.
It's anecdotal, but I can tell you that we have 5 diesel generators on site and we have 2 natural gas units, and the natural gas units they perform flawlessly. All of our units are inspected 4 times a year and they have an annual 4-hour load bank test where they wheel in basically something to simulate the entire building, load the generator down for 4 hours and then give us the results of that. We test our coolant, we test our fuel. These are probably the most looked at generators in the county, I would imagine. Our crew is good with the PMs on these. And the diesel generators that we have are reaching the age that we need to start looking at something that's going to be reliable. We have the 750 is 20 years old. The 230 is older, maybe 25, almost 30 years old. This one out here is 35 years old. And we've had issues with this generator not starting during a power outage, which is a big problem.
The other one item is that because we have no real generator power here in this building other than emergency lights. The court, which pays us $600, we bring in around $700 or so thousand in rent between the court and probation, and they haven't complained real loud, but when the power's out, they're down for the week or whatever long. And as a landlord, the tenant has expressed some concerns about, we're one of the few courthouses that doesn't have full generator power for them to operate. I guess it's the best way to put it. You know, we're the major courthouses, meaning the Superior Court buildings. I'm sure some of the local district courts have some of the same problems, but we're one of the only Superior Courts that's, when the power's out, we're shut down.
And looking forward, the air handling project that's going on up on the roof, which is also by mandate from the state. Those new units up there use considerably more electricity than the older units because they need to move 6 times the air that the original units did. So I don't have a generator big enough to sustain those. If we have a extended freezing period, if we have an extended heat period, the building's going to become uninhabitable. And that's my concern is that the state will say, well, we're just going to go occupy a strip mall, and we'll lose that revenue.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking, in a time where you have the type of weather, the type of conditions that would cause outages like this, I guess maybe I'd like to be enlightened. Does the court system still work full blast no matter what? There's mounds of snow, there's all kinds of obstacles, but their employees and the people coming to court. Because I know during the pandemic, I was involved with a court case and it took forever to make this thing through the systems here. And that was just with these kind of crap hole excuses for not getting together. But, I mean, is this really a thing where when there's a major snowstorm, these guys are still going into court, the roads are plowed, everybody's coming in and doing their business?
Yeah, last February, my experience was we lost power, I want to say 10 minutes of 8 in the morning. Everyone was already on their way in and they showed up. Of course, our maintenance crew keeps everything clear. The courthouse is a priority, Riverside and the jail, when employees are available, we make sure this place is completely clean. Sidewalks, entryways, salted, we don't want anybody slipping and falling. Folks come in and there's no electricity and they have a docket of very important cases and I don't have an answer for them. Because I have a generator that only works the emergency lights. It doesn't work computers. It doesn't work any of the other lighting.
And so they work right through all these storms and everything.
Sure. Sure. I'm not sure what their exact emergency protocols are for, obviously, if something happens.
It used to be a lot different. I mean, honestly speaking, when it snowed, they called it off, but not lately, not in the last few years. And the only reason I know is I get the first call at like 6 a.m. And they've been coming in regularly. And the only time they didn't come in, obviously, is if they don't have power, because nothing works there. Everything is, as anybody knows that's tried to file anything with court now, there's no more paper
Yeah,
filing.
even the metal detector is not on generator.
Yeah.
That's a big problem.
Everything is now, all the filings are done, via the computer. Right?
It looks like a lot of work, but you're familiar with it. If you touch one thing, you're into the whole system. We can't just put a bigger generator on an existing panel that we can't get breakers for, or a transfer switch that doesn't work, or the wiring that's not correct. It's part of a process, and I try to make it in phases, and they try to make it in phases, so it's more manageable, because we also have 300+ people across the street, and we have another 160 that we can't just shut the place down for a year and rewire it and make everything new again.
Are you ready to move on here? I guess your next thing looks like it's a fire panel, which everyone will do next thing.
Sure. The fire panel replacement, we had Hank Stewart, from Minuteman Securities, come through the building and do an assessment. He was working with Rebecca Halbert from Dover Fire, trying to get the specs of what we need here in the building, as well as the jail, and I believe Rebecca has moved on to Somersworth, so that process has been kind of stalled. He has questions about what exactly we need and where things need to be put, because obviously they're the authority having jurisdiction over the building. The best I could get was a verbal estimate from him of how much a fire panel is gonna cost to replace in here. We have the fire panel we have now in this building, I want to say is 19 years old.
I think it's original.
Oh, you think, yeah, yeah.
I don't believe it was ever replaced in my 38 years.
Right, and we have
The
areas.
building was built in 72, so I believe it's original.
Yeah, and we have areas of the building that are occupied that were not occupied when the fire panel was put in, and obviously the codes now are much different than they used to be. So we're working on an old fire panel that, when they do testing on the fire panel, normally on a new one, like the one we have at Riverside, they'll go through and do their 25% of the devices, and they'll reset the panel. In this facility, and especially at the jail, we can only do 3 or 4 devices at a time. The guy said basically it's an Atari. Says this is a very, very old piece of equipment. It's out of addresses. It doesn't meet the codes that we have right now. There's no auto sensing feature. There's no cellular backup. None of this stuff is available, and it's a proprietary panel, so we're stuck going with Harvey Allen if we need to make any adds, moves, or changes, which isn't cost effective. There are other companies out there that can do a better job and get it for us cheaper.
Yeah, worked on all the details of what you want to replace it with, I guess.
No, Hank was in the middle of doing that with, like I said, with Rebecca, who's our life safety inspector from Dover Fire, and she has moved on. So I'm not sure who he's working with now, but when I last spoke to him, they're still in that process of getting some sort of work. Again, this job will go out to bid, just like anything else.
Well, I guess the foundation repairs.
Was there any questions on the fire panel for him?
If you can give me the specifics on what is currently used, I have a special interest in sort of thing.
Sure, absolutely. After the meeting, if you have time after the meeting, I take you downstairs and you can take you down. Sure.
We're ready to move on to the foundation repairs.
Foundation repair, okay. In June of last year, we had torrential rain and flood. And what happened is our employee entrance out here, the original foundation ceiling failed, and we had a flood downstairs in community corrections, which started lifting flooring. When Surfpro went to remove the flooring, they discovered that we had asbestos tiles and asbestos matting underneath. So we had to empty the entire area, have it abated, have new flooring put down, and the foundation repaired. The total for that damage inside, which went to insurance, was about $130,000. The work outside to prevent the water from coming in was around 30. So the same company, St. Hilaire, excavation company out of Berwick, gave us that quote, because it's basically a mirror of what we have over here. We have starting on the other side during the main entrance. We're starting to see that exact stain in the ceiling. We're starting to see a little bit of the creeping water, and I'd like to get ahead of that before we have issues. The water leaks into the archive room on that side, which you guys know and you've seen from the books that they just brought in, that it's important that that area stays dry. And I'm knocking on wood that we can get ahead of that before we have another torrential rain that knocks that sealer out. It was a surprise. It just basically failed. The stuff on the outside of the foundation just came off. The best way I can describe it is like a spackle over the outside of the concrete that was put down there. It's about 14 feet down into the ground. So what they would do is they would excavate in front of the main entrance, seal the outside with the polymer, refill it with a material that will promote drainage, because right now we have hard clay and hard packed soil around here, which is awful for drainage, and grade the front of the building so the rain, instead of going towards the building, comes away from the building. You can inspect the work outside the employee entrance here. They've installed French drains besides the walkway, and we've had zero issues since. They really did a great job.
That brings us to the,
Were there any questions?
courthouse street. Oh, any questions? We'll move on. I guess the courthouse drainage swale, the one thing you do.
Yep, we have a diagram in your books there that shows another part of the drainage puzzle that we have here. Where that's outlined in red, that's had 30+ years of sediment buildup. It was done about 30 years ago and needs to be done again. Those areas need to be dredged out because what we have right now is the back parking lot will fill with water. There's 3 catch basins in the back parking lot that direct water under the parking lot and to that tree line. It comes out in that tree line. The pipe out there right now is buried with sludge and sediment for the entirety of the edge of the parking lot to County Farm Road, and then there's a culvert that goes under County Farm Road, which would be the city's responsibility, that has bricks that are collapsing into it right now. So when we get torrential rain, the back parking lot fills, the electrical room fills, the sheriff's department gets water intrusion. And we've been out there with shovels and buckets, and we got a little bit of it out of here, but it really needs to be professionally dredged. Also the curtail around the front of the property, which takes the entire corner and the back field drains into the front of this building. And that needs to be graded, and the culverts underneath the driveways replaced. And again, St. Hilaire gave us a quote on that. So we have some idea how much it's gonna cost.
And the sprinkler system, backflow device installation.
Okay, any questions on the dredging? All right, moving on to the sprinklers. Per Dover Water and the fire department, we need to install backflow device on the sprinkler system in here. We got a quote from New England Backflow to do 2 of them because we have an identical situation at the old jail. And so I put that estimate in there. Again, the job will go out to bid because it's over $10,000. But it's mandatory. We're in violation of it right now. And I attached the statutes and the fine schedule. They've given us a grace period. I forwarded them all this paperwork and showed that we're addressing it. But that came up last year during our inspection. There is a nominal annual charge for testing that's mandatory as well, but it's $50, and I think there's another $50 for permitting on the units. We have currently 26 backflow devices on the complex that are serviced in the same way. When this is done, we'll have 28 and we'll be totally in compliance, barring any new construction.
Any questions on that? Well, I guess your next one, I guess you want to do is the courthouse airflow enhancement, which I think you alluded to during the lecture.
Sure. Sure. Just to bring everybody up to speed. Your Representative Kaczynski, said you're familiar with the, IBC and the IMC implementations in 2018 from the state. The state requires that their new spaces circulate the air 6 times a year. Currently,
6 times an hour.
I'm sorry, 6 times an hour.
Scared me there.
I think, yeah, I haven't had enough, haven't had enough Danish. 6 times an hour. The existing HVAC system was twice an hour. So what they did was they spec'd larger units. This started, not a can of worms, but it's been challenging. What they discovered was that the existing units were sitting on the roof joists themselves. And the roof joists right now couldn't support any more weight. So they had to go to the perimeter of the building, install joists coming up, out from the side of the building, and then put spans of steel across. So basically large pieces of steel that run the length of the building to support the weight of the new units. Then the old units would come out and they would be, the roof would be sealed underneath them. Once these big units are spec'd, what we've discovered is there's areas of previous work in the ductwork where there's high static pressure. And the best way I know how to describe it is those air handling units that we're installing, they're perfectly capable of moving the air as fast as it needs to move, but the ductwork is not capable of handling that amount of pressure. There are returns in the wrong place because the area has been remodeled. Say we have a feed in here and a return in that hallway. That's not good because if somebody closes the door, we don't have the airflow and we end up with static pressure. And what's been described to me is you can actually expand and sometimes split the existing ductwork depending on how small it is and where the returns are. So this is what they've discovered going forward, getting those units up there. And they're asking for a change order for that money to make sure that we can get the returns and feeds where they need to be. And they've had a slight increase in the price of the steel. I say slight, but there's a considerable volume of steel up there. I think it's probably 20 or 30% higher than what they anticipated. There is a breakdown in these packets, a dollar amount, and what it does to go toward each phase of the project.
Didn't we have some kitchen issue also?
Yes, we had a kitchen issue which pushed the entire project back about 7 months. During a routine annual inspection from Dover Fire, our fire inspector had noticed that the ductwork feeding our range hood, which was a recent range hood, maybe 10 years old, it was much larger than the range hood that was there initially and was too large for the existing ductwork. So the contractors spent a fair amount of time trying to search the building and they really struggled. They couldn't go east, they couldn't go west, they couldn't go up because of the county attorney's office. Finally, they decided we could get enough grade if we dug out the back area out there and then placed it actually almost at ground level. We had a hill out in the back of the building, which we no longer have. So that set them back about 6 months of fabricating that ductwork, putting the devices in there, putting electric motors in there. We now have a safe and compliant range hood system that is able to evacuate the smoke from that area downstairs should we need it.
And that's from the cafe.
That's from the cafe,
I
correct?
do, like we have a little,
Yeah.
area back here, I guess. there's some
Sure.
of Those
And-
scattered around the building too.
Yeah, and we discussed, well, let's just get a lunch truck. I mean, if that's it, but it's more than that. The state requires that we have to have this stuff circulating. So, being the good landlords that we are, that's where we're going with that. But that eventually pushed the entire project forward, and I imagine that's where that extra cost is gonna be coming from. They're roughly 70% finished right now with the project. I think we have the county attorneys, we have deeds, and we have courtrooms on this floor that are already set. The ductwork has been changed, the items on the roof have been installed. And that's where that project is at.
Could be where it could be the Concord, the legislative office building is gonna be closed for a whole year because of HVAC issues.
It's affecting everybody. I mean, you're familiar with the code, with the 2018 changes that were made.
Oh, I could say what my opinions on these codes, but again, you have a.
We probably have the same
How
opinion.
old is this building? 40 years old?
1972. So 72.
So the air was fine in this building. More people masses dying here, and all of a sudden, because some people want to enact some new codes, you need 6 times the air handling. So we're imposing this cost on the taxpayers. It's really revolting to me, because it's not really a safety issue. It's some law that got put in, and so now you're gonna generate work for certain companies to be doing these things. But when you're talking this hood, is this, well, I understand that's for the Court Jester Cafe.
Correct, yes, we have to feed the jury.
So as I remember in the budget, I don't think there's much money that gets made with the Court Jester Cafe. Is that true?
That's true, there isn't.
But it's a necessity.
Well, it's a necessity, and if we want to keep the court, that's why we run the cafe. We work towards it breaking even. The theory is that, what we're trying to do is stop the court from building a new courthouse somewhere. First of all, we're not a convenient location. We're a distance from any downtown, we're a distance, so we work to bring the coast bus out here, in an effort to appease the court system. We run the cafeteria so that they don't have to break for an hour and a half while juries, drive out somewhere or something or get food here. It's much quicker for the jurors to go downstairs, order, and us to prepare the meals, and the court pays us for those meals. But a lot of the stuff that we're doing is to save the almost $700,000 a year that we collect in rent.
Gross rent.
Gross rent, yes, sir.
So that's not including the costs involved with providing that.
I understand. The only problem is we tried to figure out what else we would do if half this building became vacant, because that's about what court does, meaning the whole upstairs and the space down here, and also the convenience of the fact that our criminal justice programming and probation is in this building, which makes it, more accessible to the court. So there's that non-quantifiable cost of, okay, we could lose probation as a tenant also. And then our community corrections that is primarily focused on the Superior Court then would need to travel elsewhere, wherever they may decide to build a new courthouse. The court used to tell me that once the rent exceeds $500,000, the state starts to consider putting a courthouse in their capital budget. Now, I recognize that was some years ago. So that $500,000 is probably closer to $600,000 or $700,000 now. But we try and be good landlords and comply, with the rules. And the court jester is one of those things that encourages them to stay in our building.
So you can understand that someone like myself's been in business for many years, agribusiness, which is highly competitive and not subsidized at all. So we have to watch every dollar, every penny. It's a little frustrating hearing some of these arguments. Put a food truck in. I don't care. If I was gonna spend $1.5 million, I say, forget about that place, food truck. These are the kind of decisions somebody would make in a business. But yeah, here, you jump in through a pile of hoops to have a court, to be in the business of landlording out for courthouse. Just maybe I'm not thinking the same way as everybody at this table, but
Well,
I have been fairly successful in the business work I've done, and it just defies common sense and reason to me. A lot of these arguments.
If government was efficient, then communism would make sense.
Yes.
So government is not efficient.
We're not
The
talking about,
opposite of efficient.
we're not talking about communism here, but
I can tell you
I'll
that,
butt in with the comment too, though, said if they're ready to build a new courthouse, that new courthouse would be up to the current code, not the 1972 code. And
You're making this up to the new code, because what I'm hearing is every argument, we need a new generator, we need a new ductwork, we need air handling. So you're doing that, what's the difference?
Whenever a new project is started, you have to follow the codes from when the time that project was started, it's not.
You'll get that surprise when you own a house. It was built to code and then somebody comes in from the fire department and tells you you need something to bring it up to the present code. That's what people do.
My father is the town building inspector. He's informed me about the updates in the local codes and how they enforce it. It's how we have to go about things and everybody has to follow the same rules.
Yes, the building codes, I mean, there are some safety and health issues in there, so like usually building.
Especially
Built
the
to the
public
current
building.
code is usually more
There's a big
comfortable.
difference
And
between
even-
the pump, right? The pump has a real obvious reason why we have to do it. The building codes, it's really just arbitrary bureaucracy that's just sort of thrown in.
Well, I would probably say,
That's your
Again,
opinion.
your opinion.
that's probably unfair.
I mean, again,
That is my
it's
opinion.
like communism is when the government does stuff, right?
The, I would probably.
That's right.
It would be not
It's the law
Feel
enacted
the
by
integrity
legislature.
of the codes.
We'll
And
try to fix them,
and
sorry.
it's not. it's not uncommon, right?
I always go against any improve or updates to the code at any time. in
It's
our-
not uncommon, I mean, also, on the other hand, the private sector is not uncommon to voluntarily upgrade to the current code because the tenants will be happier, which is probably an issue here too. People like having buildings where the air circulates more often, we have to worry less about, diseases spreading amongst their staff, less about safety issues. So, it's not uncommon. It's not uncommon in the private sector for people to build things up to the current code, but they don't necessarily, but they get to without doing it or even to exceed the code. So I think,
Yeah,
we're not doing the Taj Mahal, the Taj Mahal is actually a good investment, but this also makes the tenants happy. And it says the courthouse built a new courthouse. It's gonna be up to the 2018 code or whatever the code is. It might even have a food service establishment, in the new building, like that's.
Moving right along.
Anyway, we should move along. So like this is a roof replacement. So that's, because I'd like to get us out of here, or and myself, I'm hoping at least before noon, but.
Okay.
And there's another meeting at 1 too, so we have a hard stop at
We-
12:59.
okay. The roof replacement, we had Garland companies come in and do an assessment of the roof. The roof was replaced in sections probably 15 years ago. It was an overlay to save money. What we have right now is the fasteners that hold down the insulation to the roof joists are rusting and coming loose because they're 50 years old and they're starting to penetrate through the roof up there. We have the air handling project doing small patches just as quickly and as cheaply as possible for some of the work that they're doing, but we're looking at an entire roof replacement, coming up pretty soon because the substructure right now is starting to fail. Even walking around up there, it kind of feels like we're walking on a piece of styrofoam in certain areas. It's just due to the age of the building itself. This was one estimate. Obviously, it will go out to bid according to the specs that we need. But that's Garland Associates did a pretty thorough inspection. I wanted to include all the pictures in there. Some of the trouble areas that we had with water pooling up and the drainage issues. You can see some puddling that actually gets worse in the wintertime. If there's any wind blown snow up there, sometimes it actually creates dams that block the drains. And then we have water intrusion into the building, which is a serious problem.
And
Archives room upstairs, evidence room upstairs. So we've had to replace the tiles in there a few times.
And I see, especially in picture number 12, and there's, I guess, on page 14, and there's other things with equipment on the roof.
Sure, yeah,
HVAC is not the only thing, like I see some, like a microwave and.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
so
we
the
have-
fridge equipment has to be up there, so you need support equipment, don't you, and also.
Yeah.
We're working on the equipment.
the equipment that's up there right now is a result of the air handling project. If you take a look at picture number 6, that's a perfect example of what we're seeing. We're starting to see the fasteners here, actually breaking in half and starting to penetrate up through the membrane itself. And we're seeing that in multiple places.
Might want to add more equipment up there, houses up there rather than somewhere else.
Right. You can see in the pictures, though, it's been patched and repatched and patched again for years, since it was put in. We have birds, seagulls pick things up that are sharp, drop them from 20 feet, it'll penetrate the roof. We have all sorts of, the workers going up there, somebody has a nut in their shoe, obviously, they do the best that they can, but we're also looking at a UV cured roof that's getting brittle just because of the age that we have up there. So once this air handling project is finished, we're going to need to look into that and address that. And that's what we got for a number from Darwin. I'm hoping it'll be a lot less. It's obviously quite a bit of money. And they're looking at more of a maintenance plan, going forward in the future.
And this proposal from G Garland Solution Options, so that's.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, they didn't charge us. It was gracious of them to do that. They also did an assessment of the jail roof, which is in great shape, and Riverside, which is also in great shape.
And they're getting to rebuild one that would last for 30 years. That was the previous one that had a shorter lifespan.
Just like shingles, Representative, Mr. Chairman, just like shingles, they're rated in years, 20 years, 30 years. Some people may get 7 years, depending on how the installation is done and weather and other effects. But 30-year is the premium option, the one that's going to last the longest. And we're seeing, failures at about 18 years, 18 to 20 years on the roof up here.
Kaczynski, seen that question.
This is gonna be the same type of, same material used for replacement?
I believe, well, I can't say that because I believe that the original roof, the original underlayment probably has some sort of nasty chemical in it that they don't use anymore. So it will be a similar size, it will be a similar design, but I don't think it'll be the same chemical composition. There may be PCBs or whatever in those tiles underneath there.
So do you go over this roof here, or they lift the whole thing?
They'll be taking, if you look at the end of the, towards the end, this shows you the layers of the roof. If we look at that spongy kind of Kit Kat looking piece on the bottom, that's the piece that is experiencing the failure of the fasteners that hold that area down right there. And then we have our first membrane, we have a friction barrier, and then they put this tar piece over it here. That blocks out UV, that blocks radiant heat, really protects the membrane that's underneath it. It's a modern roofing system, even though it looks similar. But it's going to, but yes, the answer to your question is it's going to be the same design. They're not going to be touching those corrugated pieces unless we have.
So you're gonna rip up the whole.
Yeah,
That's up there.
yeah, it's going to be, all the patches are going to come up. There's probably 2 roofs up there in some spots. I think
And
they
this is
just didn't overlay.
mostly petrochemicals that are used.
Butyls, EPDM and butyls. I'm sure those come out of propane. I'm not a chemical engineer, but
Yeah, so maybe if in the future we get the drill baby drill, it might be cheaper.
we produce more oil than anyone else in the world right now, I believe. It may very well be cheaper.
Well, I guess the next thing, the flagpoles.
Flagpoles were tough for me to get an estimate on. I believe that the timing of the year, the folks that I contacted, it was tough to get somebody to come out and do an estimate. I worked the most with Ben from High Flying Flags in Greenland. He gave me a figure of between $12,000 and $13,000 per flagpole. I could never get these are the 70-foot aluminum flagpoles that are out front. There's a pair of them.
Are they broken?
If you look at the pictures, you can see that there's stress fractures in one of them about eye level. The large bulge here. That bulging there, that's a stress fracture. Yeah, he says we're probably about 5 years away from a complete failure on that. The one to its left has a little bit less of that stress fracture. But it's just a function of the flagpole. They're the original flagpoles. They've been there for 50 years. And the replacements will probably last another 50 years, I would imagine.
That's the original flagpole from 1972.
Yeah, out there, yeah.
And
Yeah.
On the left, it mentioned reserved for the American flag, so we definitely want that one.
Sure. Sure.
As the one on the right, the flag.
The one on the, correct. The one on the right is the state flag.
Yes.
So this is just a ballpark again. This job will obviously go out to bid. Maybe somebody will come in half as much. I'm not sure, but that's been the struggle with putting all this packet together, is getting something that seems reasonable. And honestly, there's a lot of things that I don't know about the cost of what goes into this stuff.
What can happen if we don't get to this in time, because the flagpole snap and.
He said we're a couple years away from that. He took a very good look at it. Again, came out and put his eyes on it, but didn't go full with the bid because they probably understand that it's got to go out to bid and it's not a guaranteed thing.
There's more question.
Could something like that be fish plated, get aluminum and go over they do.
Like gusseted?
Truck frames and such, you put a piece higher than that wrapped around a welded, which would reinforce that whole.
So-
That's what
My,
I've done a few things.
okay, my history is as a machinist. I was a machinist at the Navy Yard and I was a machinist for 20 years.
Yeah.
I can tell you that aluminum work hardens. Aluminum has no memory. So once aluminum work hardens, it becomes extremely brittle. Once you weld aluminum, you get a brittle point. You start getting a hard brittle point. So now we have two fractured areas, or starting at least. I'm sure that there could be some repairing put into that, but how much is a repair versus a brand new flagpole? I mean, if we get a welding crew out here, I know we've had welding crews come out here just to weld up some boiler, skid plates, and it's a couple $100 just to get a welder out here. So imagine we'd have to get an engineering. Right, but we're talking engineering. I mean, I wouldn't want to trust, farmers are great and I can weld, but I don't know the first thing about structural engineering.
Does it have to be 70 feet tall?
Very good question. I'd like to replace it in kind. Folks can see it coming from both directions, coming down County Farm Cross Road and from coming down County Farm Road, you can see the flags both directions. The sentiment is that people would like them replaced in kind. A shorter flagpole, I'm sure we can look into what a percentage is, as far as a replacement, but I don't think it would be that much less. It's still 70, 60 feet of aluminum, 50 feet of aluminum.
Might say people will be hassled 50 years from now.
Possibly.
And of course, the old one is displaying the stars and stripes and glory, so
Well, yeah, and these lasted 50
So we
years,
should be-
in their current.
we should be displaying that and the New Hampshire flag and the other things proudly, so that, they.
Yeah, those are on separate poles. Which is a very good point, though, repair versus replacement, that's what we do here all the time, we look into everything, can you repair, it, replace it.
I'm just thinking, if you happen to want to get rid of it, I like to put one in my front yard. I would cut off, right above where that
Sure.
damage was. Weld a new base on there. and-
Have you priced escort cars for tractor trailers lately?
So,
It's 70 feet long, it's longer than a trailer.
Yes, so,
Plus what's in the ground.
is there another material that would be cheaper?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay,
Representative.
would it be possible to do like a fiberglass or a carbon fiber that would be, that might be, less expensive and more durable?
That's a very good question. Due to our environment here, in sub-zero temperatures and 100-degree temperatures, I would be concerned about something as inflexible as carbon fiber and fiberglass, but I don't know the answer to that. That's a very good question.
Oh, Raymond Kaczynski.
yeah, it brings to mind that carbon fiber windmill blade that just washed up in pieces in Nantucket. I would look into that deeply.
Sure.
Carbon fiber is also very expensive too, so.
Okay.
And we have a good track record with the aluminum poles being 50
Luckily-
years.
Luckily, we're not discussing putting in wind turbines in the county.
Yeah,
That
also
would be like
extremely over-engineered.
You're Kaczynski. So you have a question?
I'm good.
Okay. You move next thing, the carpet replacement.
Yeah, we're looking at carpet replacement for courtrooms 1 and 2 upstairs. There's a lot of tears, rips, patches. Areas where folks can snag themselves on the floor. Our main hallway here, as you enter, you can see it's many tones of cobalt blue.
Yeah.
And from stains and from salt traffic. We've installed mats. We have Cintas coming in every week to try to keep that dirt and wear down on those carpets. The folks here in Somersworth came in and gave us a quote on replacing those. Again, job will go out to bid. That's a quote from an industry person that we've used before, and we've been happy with their work. They actually did the flooring downstairs in community corrections. That includes replacing the code base as well around the floors.
Any more questions? The windows. 12 windows in the curtain wall, main stairway to the left of the front main entrance doors.
Yeah, I put this as a low priority. We have a quote, I believe, from Grant State in there, or did I just source the windows out? This was another one I had a tough time getting a quote on because I think the glass folks are extremely busy and they realize that it's a big job and they probably weren't going to get it, so it's tough to get somebody out here. So I looked in kind online, and got some prices, and then Grant State came through with their quote here on replacing those windows. What's happening is they're double pane, they're high efficiency ones, and they have gas in the middle of them. I believe once the seal breaks, the gas escapes, and we end up with a
Yes.
calcification or a chalking in between, so you can't see through the windows. Not an area of super concern. but the seals on the outside of the windows are also starting to deteriorate, the rubber that's on the outside of the windows, so we're starting to see water intrusion. It's in a seldom used stairwell, it's not hurting anything, it's dripping down on the inside of the aluminum and doesn't damage the foundation or anything like that. But eventually we need to address that somehow and get those sealed up, keep the water out of the building.
Maybe seriously. We put boom lift, but that's just because we pay to, we have to cover the cost of renting that project. Those other kinds of stuff. So anything else we need to bring up, Doug, or we made it to the end of your?
No, just, thank you folks for coming today. You have great questions. I like it. You guys are interested in this process, and there's a lot of great ideas here. Everybody knows hopefully how to get a hold of me, by email or text, or anything where you can call or talk about anything.
So what would be the cost? Would there be any particular cost or liability to putting the windows on for some period of time?
No liability, no, it's not, if that project is a low priority, it can be towards the end of the plan. I don't know how much longer we have with them, but again, I don't think tomorrow we're gonna wake up to huge puddles in that stairwell. It's a seldom access stairwell, it's just off the main entrance to the left, and it's actually in the shadow most of the day. Only gets sun around 3 o'clock
I think we included it because it's a 6-year plan.
in the cost, yeah.
And, that's why we included it in this plan. Would we do it next year, the year after, the year after? No. But it's certainly, as it goes closer to the 6 years, it's much more likely that we would need.
But if we considered bumping it to the next 6-year plan, would that be a problem?
I can't tell you that for sure.
It's low priority at this time.
But, you could certainly remove it, and I guess if it turned out to be something different. The goal of this 6-year capital plan is so that we don't have to go back to the delegation. And have the delegation say, we just approved a 6-year plan for you. Why didn't you consider it in the 6-year plan? And then, we worked hard at that in the last 6-year plan that expired in 2023, and that seemed to work out well. We didn't need to come forward with any large capital items. Obviously, I'm not talking about the nursing home.
Right.
I'm talking about so that seemed to work out well for the 6-year period. We didn't run ourselves into a situation where we needed to come back to the delegation to bond something. And that's the goal of this plan. But, as we tried to articulate in there, what we know is a problem and what we believe will be a problem in the 6-year period. If the judgment of the, delegation is that some of this can wait more than 6 years, that's totally your call. We just don't want to be in a position where in 5 years, it's a problem and somebody says something and it's a reflection on us not doing proper planning.
So on the topic of bonding, would this be funded with one bond that is done at one given point to cover all of the projects in it? Or would it be that you go out to bond for each project or a subset of the projects as the expenses for that come due?
Probably the first, Diane's our finance director, and I just had a conversation with bond counsel and with our financial advisor. Simply to judge the market. And it appears as if the market is likely to be most favorable in January. That's our financial advisor's best prediction. And so what we would likely do is those items that are emergent, like the sewer line at Riverside that's, bad, and the chimney that's located by Riverside, that could fall into the daycare. If it's not taken down, those items, we would probably cost that out, and we would likely do a ban or bond anticipation note, because that's something we would do immediately upon, we would go out to bid immediately upon approval. And then we would likely, bond the entire amount come January, because there is bond costs, that we don't want to repeat.
Okay.
You know,
Right.
there's probably $25,000 in bond costs,
Well,
Diane?
probably a little more than that because we're going out to public sale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, and that bond cost won't matter if we go out to bond 3 million or the
Right.
whole amount.
Okay,
So we only want to do that once.
right.
But we might do a ban, you know, for those items that are identified in this, and those are the only two that immediately come to mind. We'd obviously look, presuming approval by the delegation, we would obviously look at what are most critical. Certainly the rotted sewer line at Riverside is high on the priority list. We would look at what else is the highest priority and borrow to that and then go from there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Because we don't wanna pay the 30,000 or whatever
Yeah,
the bond
that makes sense,
fee
yeah.
is.
Looks like we have a comment from Doug and a question from Reverend Kaczynski.
Sure. I will also provide the delegation with the survey that I was speaking of the advantages of natural gas versus diesel to power the generators. I'm sure I have that in here somewhere.
So I see there's 11 major items here. So how do those, I don't see any ranking on or what year that would be proposed in. I mean, I know when we do the 10-year plan in House, state 10-year plan, they have them ranked according to years and
Sure.
you know,
Sure.
that.
So
Have that, you have,
we have three of the highest priority items are, like Administrator Bauer said, we have the chimney, we have the sewer line at Riverside, and the electrical life safety, moving generators around and getting that squared away. Those are really, really intense issues for us. The others, they are of high priority, and honestly, all of the stuff that I put in the capital requests, or most of the stuff I put in the capital requests have been high priority. Because we can take care of the other items through our regular 280, our regular building repair accounts.
Yeah.
Basically pick at it, you know, year after year. We don't have anything else imminent failure, that's coming up. But fingers crossed, and I've said it.
that's what kind of concerned me, because I heard the presentation last week to the nursing home. And what I'm gathering just seems like everything, well, not everything, say 85–90% is all mandatory, essential and high. So it sounds like, to me, looking from the outside, that everything's gonna get done early. What I'm seeing 6 years, it seems like you would space these things out
Sure.
in a reasonable.
That would be the case if I was able to take the 160 residents in Riverside and house them for a year. Because we're talking about jackhammering through residents' room to put access holes into the sewer pipe. It's, a lot of that's a big project. We can't just pull the trigger on it all of a sudden tomorrow and start moving these things around. There's stuff that is higher priority. There are things that also have to be addressed while these jobs are being done, which aren't on here because they don't require money. They require our crews to provide the labor.
I was asked by somebody, well, what projects are in year 6? Because it sounds like, it's just at once, really fast. And the other thing, while I'm at it, I was a little surprised by these meetings in the summer. Now, all these get-togethers we've had with the nursing home and such, nobody ever mentioned the 6-year plan coming up, and apparently expired last year. So I would have thought we would have got some notice on this, that this is coming up. And it just seemed like all of a sudden I get an email that in August, in which most people, I think representatives, give respect to people's summers and stuff. I was surprised to have in the heat of August, all of a sudden we're pushing through something like this. And it seems like with some of the needs you described and others did, the other presentations, it should have been addressed earlier. If this expired in 2023, why did it take till now and we got no notice? No, I don't remember, maybe I missed it or something. Somebody saying, well, you know, this coming year, we're gonna be doing the 6-year plan. there's a lot available. Am I wrong with that?
I'm not sure the timing, but I can tell you that I think everybody was looking towards the new building and saying, okay, we know what the issues are with this building, let's look towards the new building. The issues are still there, and I think you'll notice if you look at the other sheets, you were here last week for the meeting, anything that is listed as other than high priority, I'm not mandated by law to do that. The things that are high priority are all mandates. Those are all things to satisfy CMS, to satisfy Bureau of Prisons, to satisfy Dover Fire, to satisfy the utilities.
Well, I guess, these things didn't come up this past month. You know, they must have been known about a while back, and it would have been prudent, I would think, to have gone, at least got into this in 2023. Because the last time, I believe it was 2017 when there was a 6-year plan. So it just, I don't know, just something struck me as odd, the way it all came about, so it seemed like fast. I don't know. Without notice.
It might feel that way to you, but honestly, we've been working on this plan for more than 6 months.
Yeah.
I mean, for us
Years.
to pull all this together.
This started out as a 8.5 by 11 white line sheet of paper where I just wrote down, okay, this is a problem, what are we gonna do about it? And how long have we got?
Well, I see the dates and some of the estimates, but I'm just saying, as a delegation member, I don't recall getting any heads up at all about anything like this.
A warrant out earlier would be nice.
And sounds like, you know, you're talking a lot of money, a lot of projects.
But we were here, we had a good forum.
And speaking about the last one, so I think that was about $4 million. It was brought up to me that the solarium that was gonna be put on a nursing home, which never got done, that was close to $1 million. So was money bonded for that?
Yeah.
Is there money sitting somewhere?
No, the executive, Diane, could you do that printout that we sent to Representative Newton? The executive committee authorized 700 and Diane will give you the exact number.
I remember.
To move to move that to the radio project for the town. The executive committee, when we recognized that we were unable to complete that project because of the asbestos that was in the cinder block walls, that it changed the project to millions of dollars, so we stopped. And when we stopped, it was at the time when we were looking at upgrading the radio projects for the towns. Thanks, Dan. So we asked the executive committee to transfer from that courtyard project to the radio project. And the executive committee voted to do that. At the same time, that helped enable us to get another $750,000 grant from our congressman, who got it as a
COPS grant.
it came through as a COPS grant. We got a directed grant to contribute to that radio project also. And we finished the radio project, which is about $3.8 million. We finished that radio project with ARPA funds. So we have now completed the radio project, and now, due to some really smart work, you should claim credit for it. We were able to get another 700. Tell me the exact amount. $715,000 COPS grant to upgrade the radios for all the towns that we dispatch for. So as soon as we get that, we've already reached out to the fire chiefs and the police chiefs that we dispatch for and say, hey, don't do any radio upgrades for your cruisers or your fire trucks. We have a $715,000 grant coming through COPS, and we will fund all your radio upgrades, which is kind of the last piece of the radio project, upgrade for all the towns that we dispatch for. So, that's where that money went, but I actually have the breakdown of the last 6 years and what was spent and where.
Yeah, well, I guess I just didn't follow that, you know, I assumed that money was getting spent for that solarium there.
No, we,
Just wondering what, kind of where.
no, it
I
went,
don't think I don't, maybe you told us, maybe we were.
well, it would have been part of the executive committee minutes that was sent out and, I'm sure Representative Newton remembers well, because he made the motion. I remember those things.
If he made the motion, he'll remember.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, but we sent him that exact document earlier this week. He had asked for it about what happened to the last 6-year plan, but that's what happened to the balance of the money that was. You'll see it as you read it.
Okay. And certainly, I thought it was unusual to have the meeting in August, but we had very good turnout. We had lots of very thoughtful and incisive questions, and we do a forum of the committee. And actually, the purpose of the meeting is to make recommendations to the executive committee. So it may not be a unanimous vote, but I entertain the motion to accept the responsibilities that appropriate is on the sheet here. The project 4120 for record deeds and the various 4160s for the courthouse maintenance. Total by page 4080, which would be bonded, and not all of which would be done right away, be spread out, possibly even probably some of this stuff over the 6-year time plan. So I have a second for that. So, all right, Brendan Howard is seconded. So are you ready to you're gonna probably roll the people here and have the vote? And
I think you ought to have discussion on that.
sure, okay, have some more discussion. Yes. Yes, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I would say, I would vote against this as it's presently structured with this 10% contingency. I think this is way excessive. Just adding too much
Fair enough.
leeway onto this. I could accept.
Yes, yeah, hopefully not all these go 10% over, we might even like some to go under.
Well, just so you know, if anything is under, there's only 2 things that can be done with the under amount when everything's completed. And they don't have to be approved by the delegation. That would be, to substitute, or not substitute, but another project that came up that was unexpected. And it would have to have a similar life expectancy is one. The second would say none of that happens and everything's completed and there's leftover money. The only other thing that could be done is it could be used to make a bond payment. And all of those would have to be approved by the delegation. None of those are judgments by the commissioners.
And just 10% contingency applying to the other subcommittees projects too.
They were applied across the board.
Yeah, so that's something.
You know, we think some might, and some might not need it, and some might need more. We just picked it 10%.
So just to clarify, if we bond a certain amount, and that's, so say we take the 10% off, we bond that amount. And that falls short of what we actually need. What do we do?
Well, depending on how much it is, we'd have to come back for another bond. Okay. And an example of that is the jail. For those of you that have been on the delegation for a period of time, we actually came back twice because we didn't have enough money to complete the jail.
Okay, and flip side of that, if we bond the 10%, if we bond with the 10% included, what's the cost? What are the costs of? And then it's in fact, under that, 10% less than what we bond for. What's the cost of doing that?
Well, there's no, the only cost is that we make payments on an interest rate of approximately 3% to 3.5%. We don't know. That's why we're waiting till January. We've been advised that January is the best time to do. It's always, well, my financial advisor is January is always the best time to do bonds.
Okay.
So, we pay this firm to give us that advice. And Diane and I had a Zoom call with them just the other day, and that was the information we were provided. So we hope for the best rate. Second, what happens with the leftover money is only two choices. Both have to be approved by the delegation. And that is, choice one is another project's come up that nobody expected, that has a similar life expectancy to the term of the bond. And the delegation could vote for that, or if the delegation chooses, whatever leftover money is made could be used towards bond payments.
Okay,
Only two choices.
and there's no penalty for prepaying the bond if we get that.
There is the type of,
Yeah, it depends on when we issue bond, but
Yeah.
normally we include language where there's some flexibility, where we could refinance at a future date if.
so refinance is like prepaying.
Yeah.
You know, that so we have in the past, not recently, because of course, interest rates have been much more favorable. But in the past, we have refinanced bonds. Again, that has to be with the approval of the delegation. We have refinanced bonds to bring them, you know, to recognize a lesser interest rate.
Okay, great, thanks.
That's happened, twice since I've been here.
Any more comments, questions, discussion?
Well, it sounds like
Okay,
it sounds like the downside costs of bonding too little are probably higher than the downside costs of bonding more than we may need.
Okay,
Do you agree with that, Jan? Representative Bixby?
so, we can go ahead to the vote, which is to recommend the CI to set these line items to capital improvement plan, and then the executive committee would take that place, I believe, at September. Please, is that 4 p.m. on September 4th, is that correct?
September 4th is the executive committee. at
Executive
4 p.m.
and the full delegation.
Is at 7.
Okay, yeah. And I suppose one of the things we could consider whether the contingency amount was appropriate or not, so that's probably, so
And do you want to vote on that separately, or do you want to just vote on the whole?
I'd rather just vote on the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because like I
Let's
said,
do that,
it's
and
the same in all the other subcommittees. And
Yeah.
That's probably an appropriate question for the executive committee to consider. So, all right, so you want me to call the roll or?
It's up to you.
Okay, Representative Bixby,
Yes.
Conlon is not here and excused. Representative Granger? No. Okay, yep. Representative Oregon votes yes. Representative Howard? Yes. Yes. Representative Kaczynski?
No,
All right. Reverend Kenny is not here, he's excused. Cecilia Rich, thank you.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. And Reverend Turcott is excused, and do we need the? Okay, oh, sorry, we're sitting right next to you too. Yes,
Yes.
yes, okay. And Reverend Turcott is not here. Reverend Schmidt, we have to ask him, or do you just?
No, I don't have no vote.
Okay, abstains, all right, so what was the official count? 5-2, which is but as a quorum, and that's a majority of the committee, and so thank you. Just thanks everybody for your time, and I think it was a very interesting session. I especially enjoyed seeing the old books in person, so I heard about them a lot. I think that was.
Representative Granger, if you have a moment, I can show you the fire pan.